The number of times I saw the same walk was always with the same bags, very similar clothes, and off to the same sort of car, etc., etc. They weren't all exactly the same, but the variety was definitely very limited. After 5 minutes, the regularity of it was absolutely horrifying, so I went back to the exit to watch from a closer angle and fully realised that the commercial conditioning complex was successfully cloning people into consumer groups on an unconscious level. Long years later, I would find out that market researchers in the late 70s had lost control of the class system completely as it fell apart, and lifestyle choices became not only the new vector for stimulating purchases, but also became the foundation of political programs, as all candidates from Thatcher and Reagan onwards would make impossible promises to swing voters to win elections based on these statistics. Shortly after my attack of the clones and a bloody good detox, I decided to go and look at this phenomenon through what is commonly called the astral plane. Now, I quickly came to a place that I can only describe as the spiral fields. Each human on Earth was giving out a continuous electric green spiral from the top of its head, and these spirals would wend and weave their way on up into the quite dark and misty spiral fields, where they were nurtured by a few not very nice looking beings wearing red hooded robes. Now the imagery is very Pink Floydish, I know, but stay with me. These beings were tending the spirals, a little as if they were great ghostly farmers stalking through fields of pea vines, feeling down the length of the spirals to feel their wavelength, check their amplitude, and observe their frequency. This permits them to see which set of limited ideas this soul or that is falling into. Is it Nike? Or is it Reebok? But the Nike's over there, and the Reebok's over here, and lock the Adidas's up in the corner because they're always very reactionary and rather violent. It's a kind of sorting out and grouping of the unconscious manipulated, and the idea, of course, to weed out all of the unpredictable ones, and then to regularise the spirals to reduce the diversity, but to also group them by how they react to certain stimuli. All this cultivating and homogenisation to one ultimate end, of course, that complete control that we find as a uniform theme throughout all conspiracy theories. The only way I can describe this herding and conditioning is a bit like making a whole group of strings in a piano all of the same length. You can't make any music with it, just noise. All this going on, and not one spiral seemed to be aware of it, so I quietly withdrew and made sure to regularly tend to my own spiral from there on in. This is also the point in life at which I realised that strange connection between waves and spirals. That two-dimensional image of a wave, so often proposed to us by science, is actually a spiral if we look at it multidimensionally. The deliberate cutting off of this higher level so that it can be manipulated with impunity is where we start to hit very serious problems that fundamentally stop us from getting out of this mess and push us further and further in all the while. Now, the secret teachings of natural law, as written down by Hermes Trismegistus, teach us that you cannot fix a problem on one level of reality without first visiting a higher level above it to look for the solution. Manly P. Hall explains it and many other things quite beautifully, despite his status as a 33rd degree Freemason. Remember, stop throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Manly's conferences are manifold and all of them are very good logical stuff. Again, you can listen while you work with a comfortable set of headphones. So, let's run through this one very quickly. Let's say we are presented with a physical problem, a nail stubbornly stuck in a piece of wood, and you need to get it out. You examine the problem, and your brain rather quickly works out the solution and tells your hands how to choose and use the right tools to remove the nail. Success. Now, by the same token, if you have a mental problem like a repetitive bad life choice, it isn't your brain that is going to be able to get you out of it. In fact, your brain's incapacity to learn is what keeps getting you into the problem. So let's take the example of jumping into a relationship with both feet, having yet again chosen the wrong kind of partner to live with. This kind of unconscious impulsiveness can lead you to having your life become a regular wreck, roughly every 6 weeks, or for the more enduring, about every 7 years. Now, if you are one of the many victims of this kind of illness, it isn't actually your brain that is going to be able to fix it for you. In this case, the brain is broken. Forget it. It's in a repeating rut and it can't get out. The root of the problem may well be that you have some kind of buried emotional trauma that you aren't aware of, and you keep unconsciously choosing to invite this same type of bad person into your life to relive the trauma and try to get the exercise right, or at least unveil the trauma and go on to understand why, what, when and how. Behind the scenes, the unconscious or higher self keeps shoving us into these awful situations that we need to live through to be able to learn something in particular. Once the lesson is learned, the cycle stops. But don't think that's the end of it. Oh no, we do then have to move on to the next lesson, and the next lesson, and the next lesson, and the next lesson, and the next lesson. You get the idea. Now, taking life head-on in this way is not for the faint-hearted, but believe me, it does get better sooner or later. Details on the mechanisms of that a bit further on. Now, a word of warning, yet again, we can call this unconscious or higher self whatever we like, in the same way we call the selfish, mental, materialist version of ourselves the ego, but it never means that we are out of control of it, and neither does it mean that it is all somebody else's responsibility. There is never any exterior entity driving our lives from above, below, or even to the side, even if, and I say this from very rich experience in the domain, it can seem like that in the beginning. Your higher self, like your ego, is you, and don't you forget it. Now, getting to know one's higher self is a bit like meeting a crazy old aunt who the rest of the family ostracised while you were a child. Quite simply because you have never been allowed to know this person, they will seem at first a bit remote, idiosyncratic, and as having a rather evil sense of humour. This is because, in fact, they have been persistently present throughout your life and continually throwing all sorts of obstacles in your way to make you wake up and realise that they are there. As a result of this, their sense of humour may be not only twisted, but to paraphrase Adams again, actually sprained. Only your compassion will heal the rift. You see, understanding what the repetitive self-torture is all about could be achieved a lot easier by talking the trauma through with yourselves. Failing that, you could just talk it through with another human being, on the condition, of course, that they are not a professional psychoanalyst. You would in fact be better off sticking a pin in a map to choose a destination at random and hitchhiking there with relentless abandon. Empty all of your emotional baggage on any and every poor soul who gives you a lift, or better still, shut your mouth and listen to their problem and try to find the key to your own hidden amongst theirs. When you finally find the significance of the events that keep troubling you in relation to the whole, you can then bring the unconscious trauma into the conscious realm so that the brain can then put it on its list and stop you from repeating the cycle, having joyfully learned whatever the fuck that was all about. Very often there is a cute little code, word game or other spiteful significance contained within the unravelling of the problem, and the significance can even cross language barriers. After a financial war on two fronts simultaneously with my ex-partner and my bank, I won both battles on the same day within the confines of the bank. I swaggered out of there over €500 richer. Well, not exactly richer, but not needing to go and find €500 to pay back to word-twisting, dominating little specialists in subtle deception, or the bank. Now, on crossing the bank threshold, I suddenly keeled over in such acute agony that I would have given anything and everything I owned for it to stop. Shortly after, I was diagnosed with having a gallstone nicely on the move. In French, for some mysterious reason, a gallstone is called a calcul. See what I mean? I had been doing too much of a dance around the numbers. Calcul, calculator, calculating. Now, anyone knowing a bit about Metamedicine will know that I had just liberated myself from some kind of long-term oppression. I had in fact taken a very firm stance against the bank, who I had caught cheating with overdraft fees while checks were clearing. Now, by removing all movements from my account and transferring all of my economic activity to the local post office, I then left the offending bank account overdrawn to an exact and precise sum corresponding to the amount of erroneous bank charges. I then offered them the possibility to make the fictive sum existing between them and me disappear, or alternatively take me before a court where I would then unveil the evidence of cheating. It was, by my own admission, a bit of a ballsy move, and it was a very big life landmark for me, even though it was for less than €500, in modifying my attitude towards the paper reality. The fact that my oversure of herself ex got mixed up in it all just added spice to the situation, but the kidney stone was also very much linked to her as well. You see, the kidneys spiritually are the centre of fear and oppression, and gallstones are the crystallization of pure fear and are related to exterior domination. When I found out what the agonizing was and came to understand it as part of the whole, I alternately laughed myself into fits of freedom and then screamed blue murder until it passed with the help of lots of birch leaf tea. Make a note of that. Birch leaf tea is incredibly efficient for getting rid of gallstones. The problem is, for a large number of people, that there is this false ceiling that stops us from communicating with that extra level of ourselves, and society as a whole, of course, does everything it can to stop us breaking through. Now, many people feel the need to go off and meditate and learn this technique and that, always on a quest of quite often failed self-discovery. I've observed many of them amongst the more affluent and/or aspiring New Agers, always hoping that the next shaman, priestess, yogi, elf friend or prana nutritionalist is going to save their souls in exchange for several £100, euros or dollars. Now, I have found another way out, and it is a multifunctional, multidimensional solution that will save you money, heal your body, reconnect you to spirit, help you discover and rediscover yourself many times over, make you a lot more useful to the rest of us, and eventually break you out of the matrix enough to make you available to help rebuild community life on your own terms with the rest of us as the old system eats itself around you. Now, you could choose any or a selection of these reasons to take up this method, and when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, every jest you make using this method is another miniature blow to the empire as well. And now I will share it with you and share what it has done for me for free. It all begins in a garden. Doing a spot of gardening based on permaculture ethics and principles is a very simple exercise. It is low maintenance stuff, so you can have a go at it even if you are still pouring away 60 or more hours of your week into feeding the empire. That's work, driving to and from work, and then driving around buying all your worldly needs because you work and drive too much, and then watching violent TV programs to forget about the futility of it all. Because of the cleverness of the techniques, you can do a little bit quite easily and start a fair deal with the land on which you live to get it to help you along as you finally become a team. The details of how to get started if you have too much lawn are listed with photos on the following webpage. http://solutionssimples, both of those plural, that's two S's in the middle of it all, .wixsite.com/solutions-simples/lawn into veg. Lawn into veg is all one word. Now, in the writing of the script that I am reading to you, I hesitated rather a lot as to whether I should read aloud the technique, and finally I decided yes, but not yet. The reading of the Easy Start Lawn into Veg technique will be added as a colour supplement on Sunday. This way, and many other tried and tested techniques that have come out of permaculture, isn't about the production, although that helps, and it isn't even about the high output, low input ratio either, but that helps too. It is profoundly about learning how to think not only holistically, but also positively, and learning about natural patterns and rhythms. It's all about getting back into contact with nature, and so into contact with spirit through useful, pragmatic, intelligent exercises that you can then tailor up to your needs or down to your needs once you get the swing of it. No shamans, no mind-altering substances, although you could probably grow a few of these because they do help, and no fees. The number of times I saw the same walk was always with the same bags, very similar clothes, and off to the